When scrolling on social media, you'll find helpful insights, questions, even kindness. But then you'll see one message that stands out. Sharp, provocative, a little cruel. You know what I'm talking about. It's a text snippet that punches the air for attention. But what drives that single line of spite? Why does someone click post knowing full well they're going to upset someone on the other side of the screen? Because at that moment, the ordinary world of clicks and shares gives birth to something more curious. What happens in the mind of a troll? In the 1990s, you had to join a forum to speak to strangers online. The pages were plain gray backgrounds, blue hyperlinks, usernames that carried a strange intimacy. You recognized the same people returning day after day. The early internet had a kind of politeness baked into its slowness. You typed, waited, you thought before you replied. Conversations unfolded like letters rather than gunfire. Even when arguments broke out, there was still a faint sense of human connection. Then came the broadband revolution. Faster connections meant faster reactions. Platforms like MySpace, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter didn't just connect us, they amplified us. The architecture shifted from community to audience. Suddenly, you weren't just writing to a few dozen forum friends, you were posting to thousands of strangers. Every message, every comment, every photo carried the possibility of virality. The internet had become a stage. And on that stage, something strange happened. The line between authenticity and attention blurred. Likes became the new form of validation. And in that noise, a new type of personality emerged. The anti-performer, the person who didn't want attention through praise, but through chaos. By the late 2000s, the term troll had taken hold. Originally a reference to fishing, throwing out bait to see who bites it, became a digital archetype. But that word troll is almost too simple, because behind every insult, there's something deeper. Psychologists studying online behavior began to notice patterns. People who scored higher in what's called the dark tetrad of personality traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and sadism were statistically more likely to troll. Yet, most trolls aren't psychopaths. They're people reacting to the environment they're placed in. The online space, especially one that rewards visibility, creates what researchers call online disinhibition, when you can't see the other person, when there's no eye contact, no social cost, no physical cues of hurt, your empathy shuts down. The brain stops processing the interaction as human to human and begins to treat it like a game. Even something as small as mood plays a role. One study found that users who read a thread filled with toxic comments were significantly more likely to post toxic comments themselves, even if they came in with no intention to do so. Trolling spreads like a contagion, not because we're inherently cruel, but because we unconsciously mirror the tone of the environment we're in. So when you scroll through the chaos of social media today, you're not just looking at individuals, you're looking at an ecosystem, one designed to amplify outrage. And in that ecosystem, the troll thrives. Offline, every action is filtered through empathy and consequence through the subtle micro expressions that tell you when someone's hurt, offended, or afraid. Online, those signals vanish. What remains is a sterile white box, a cursor, a keyboard, and a reward system waiting to trigger. The troll feels a rush, but not the kind you might expect. It's not joy, it's anticipation, a blend of curiosity and control. How will they react? This is the psychological heartbeat of trolling, the need to feel something, even if that something is chaos. Researchers call it intrinsic motivation through social dominance. The troll isn't always seeking attention in the traditional sense, they're seeking proof of power. When someone replies in anger, it's not the confrontation they feel, it's validation. And so each reaction reinforces the behavior, forming a loop as powerful as any addiction. But look closer still. Behind that smug comment might be a person who feels powerless in their real life, unnoticed, unheard, perhaps humiliated elsewhere. Online, they discover a switch, a way to flip the emotional balance to make others feel small the way they often do. The internet becomes their stage, but also their refuge, a place where emotional displacement masquerades as strength. And yet, not all trolls act from pain. Some do it out of play. Psychologists studying everyday trolling found that many describe it as a game of boundaries. They troll not out of hatred, but out of fascination, testing how far they can go before the system or another user pushes back. In that sense, trolling isn't always about destruction. It's about experimenting with identity. Behind a username, people try on new versions of themselves. The comedian, the rebel, the cynic, the villain. The internet becomes a costume shop for the psyche, where performance replaces accountability. The moment the post button is clicked, something remarkable happens in the brain. A small pulse of dopamine fires in the reward center. It's the same chemical released when you win a video game, score a point, or pull a slot machine lever. It's victory. You've caused a reaction. You've moved the world, even if by a millimeter. Now multiply that by millions of comments, billions of posts across thousands of platforms. What we get is not individual pathology, but systemic psychology. Culture of provocation, built not from evil intent, but from design incentives. Every angry reply, every quote tweet dunk, every screenshot of outrage is still engagement. The algorithm doesn't care who's right. It only counts who's acting. And so, trolling becomes a transaction. You give emotion, and the platform gives you attention in return. Both sides leave feeling something, but neither side feels satisfied. But for the troll, satisfaction isn't the goal. The goal is control, to know that somewhere, someone is feeling because of them. That invisible thread between two screens becomes their proof of existence. They don't see a human being, they see a button they can press. And that, more than anything, is what makes trolling so potent. It's not just cruelty, it's the illusion of agency in a world where agency feels scarce. When you strip away empathy, consequence, and face, what remains is the primal desire to feel impact. To know you still matter, even if it's for the wrong reason. Imagine two worlds sitting side by side. In one, it's 1974. You're sitting at a wooden desk, a fountain pen in hand, writing a letter to someone who's upset you. Every word you choose feels weighted. You pause, reconsider, cross out a phrase that sounds too harsh. Because you know, once it's sealed, sent, and read, you can't take it back. Your name is at the bottom. Your handwriting is proof of authorship. Now, jump forward to today. You're on your phone, thumb hovering over a screen. The cursor blinks, the words come fast. There's no ink, no pause, no permanence. The send button is right there, glowing faintly blue. The name above your comment isn't really yours, just a handle, a mixture of letters and numbers. You hit post. And in a split second, the thought that once demanded reflection now travels halfway across the world. That's the contrast. Not just of medium, but of mentality. In the past, communication had friction. There were gates to your expression, effort, material, distance. Today, communication is instant and infinite. In the older days, you had to look them in the eye or sign your name beneath your words. You risked confrontation, awkward silence, and consequences. But online, there is no barrier. You can strike, vanish, and be home for dinner before the other person has even read it. And so, empathy, once reinforced by the weight of proximity, evaporates in the heat of immediacy. It's the difference between a candle and a laser. One flickers, gentle, illuminating a space between people. The other is cold, focused, distant, powerful, but detached. In face-to-face conversation, you're governed by subtle feedback loops. You see the flinch, hear the change in tone, feel the discomfort. It activates something deeply human. Your brain reminds you that this is a person. Online, those cues are gone. The screen is an empathy barrier, a glass wall that turns human emotion into abstract data. When we argue in person, it's a negotiation between bodies. When we argue online, it's a performance for an invisible crowd. The goal shifts from resolution to reaction. Winning becomes about who gets the most engagement, not who has the stronger point. And so, trolling thrives not in darkness, but in light. In the bright, public arenas of social media, where humiliation travels faster than reason. The contrast deepens when you consider how memory works. A spoken insult fades. A written letter can be burned. But an online comment, screenshot, archived, algorithmically promoted can live forever. Yet it's also disposable. Paradoxically, we've created a world where words are both permanent and meaningless, where nothing disappears, but nothing quite matters either. And that breeds a peculiar kind of detachment. The modern user is in an ocean of infinite voices. The only way to stand out, sometimes, is to shout or to sting. The quieter, More thoughtful forms of dialogue drown in the tide. Meanwhile, the design of the platforms themselves has widened this divide. Old forums rewarded consistency, people built reputations. Modern platforms reward moments, a viral post, a spike of outrage, a flash of drama. No memory of who you are, only how you made people feel for a few seconds. That's why trolling today isn't just antisocial, it's algorithmic. It feeds the machine that feeds on us. In the old world, the consequence of cruelty was social shame. In the new one, it's social capital. A cutting comment can gain traction, earn replies, spark a thread. Even the outrage it provokes becomes fuel for visibility. The punishment for cruelty has turned into its reward. So what does it reveal about us, about human nature, that we've built entire worlds where cruelty can thrive behind glass? Maybe it says less about evil and more about emptiness. Because when you strip away the noise, trolling isn't about anger. Often, it's about attention. It's about being seen. For centuries, people sought recognition through contribution. The artist, the craftsman, the thinker. You earn notice by building something that lasted. But in the digital age, permanence is impossible. The internet resets every second. Yesterday's outrage is buried under today's scandal. And so, for some, the only way to feel significant is to provoke, to pierce the blur. Attention, even negative, becomes a substitute for meaning. That's what the troll represents. A warped reflection of a universal desire to be acknowledged. It's the same need that drives applause or validation or love. The only difference is that the troll has learned a shortcut. They've discovered that it's easier to be hated than to be ignored. But this reveals something uncomfortable about the rest of us too. Because if trolling survives, it's because it works. It feeds on engagement. And we outraged, righteous, entertained supply it. We indirectly fuel the trolls. Every angry reply, every quote tweet, every public takedown adds oxygen to the fire. The more we react, the more we reinforce the idea that provocation equals power. And that might be the quiet tragedy of the modern internet, that we've mistaken reaction for relationship. So when we think about trolling as a social problem, we might be asking the wrong question. It's not just, why are people so cruel online? It's also, why do we keep rewarding cruelty with attention? It's not just a moral failure, it's a design feature. The internet has turned emotion into currency. Outrage is profitable. Engagement is power. And somewhere in that economy of reaction, empathy has become inefficient. But maybe the deeper reflection lies in what trolling tells us about ourselves when we're not the troll. Because almost everyone has had that moment hovering over a comment box, tempted to say something sharp, sarcastic, a little cruel. Maybe we didn't post it, but we felt it. That flicker of temptation is the same shadow that animates the troll. The difference is choice. Trolling, then, is not born purely of malice, it's born of misdirection. It's the human need for connection twisted through a system that rewards disruption instead. And that's why empathy is the only force that weakens it. Not sympathy for cruelty, but understanding of the conditions that create it. Because the moment we treat trolls only as villains, we absolve the system that raised them. We ignore the algorithms that feed them, the audiences that sustain them, and the culture that quietly encourages them performing. We've created tools capable of connecting billions, yet so often we use them to lash out at others. Because somewhere along the way, we began to confuse attention with affection and engagement with empathy. And until that distinction becomes clear again, we'll keep scrolling through the noise, each of us a little more defensive, a little more performative, and a little more desperate to be seen.